on the topics we're going to be looking at tonight, because the first session we're going to be spending some time looking at is the digital landscape of the church. We thought we'd go big and discuss some big topics. But look, there you go. I'm going to welcome up a few panelists onto the stage right now, as who people are going to help me and us look at this whole area of the digital landscape of the church in 2022. And I'd love to invite up Jason Ham, who is the Operations and Communication and Creativity Coordinator at Rediscover Church in Exeter. Hello, Jason.
How's it going?
Great. It's good stuff. Jason, you were previously the social media manager for God TV, and fabulous stuff. I'd love to also invite up Lashomo Hamakoma, and Lashomo has a background of working with startups and charities to build online engagement strategically. She is also passionate about seeing churches and leaders transform their digital platforms into digital ministries. So it's wonderful to have you here as well, Lashomo. Good evening. Great to see you.
Good evening, Matt.
And I'd love to welcome up Sean as well. Sean, it's fabulous to have you with us. You're the youth pastor at St. George's Church in Surrey, and you're a worship pastor, creative. And I'm so pleased that you guys are all in the room this evening to help us discuss this whole topic of the digital landscape of the church in 2022. Where are you guys first? Where are you guys tuning in from? Where are you connecting in from? Lashomo, where are you based?
I'm based in London at the moment, but I recently moved from Glasgow in Scotland about 4 months ago. So yeah, it's been an exciting journey so far.
Okay, fabulous. How about you, Jason?
I'm in Exeter in Devon, next to the beaches, and don't go about the whole cold tea, cream tea. Do you put the cream on first, jam on first? It could get complicated. So yeah.
Fabulous. Okay, good stuff. And then Sean, how about you?
Just from Surrey. We're kind of in a large village, just within inside the M25, so just about kind of London, Surrey-ish. So.
Okay, well, I am really looking forward to picking your brains and just having a bit of space really to think about this, because the church across the UK has been on a massive journey when it comes to digital. It's been challenging. It's been there've been many opportunities that presented themselves, but we can discuss some of that, and we can look about I'd love to hear what you guys think are the opportunities going forward, but maybe we can start before the last couple of years, so pre-pandemic. What would you say, maybe we start there, just thinking about describing the digital landscape pre-COVID, pre the last couple of years. Where was the church, big picture, across the UK? What were some of the features of the landscape? And then maybe we can drill down into your own context. What did the landscape look like for you specifically in your own churches? Jason, do you want to? Lashomo, yeah, please.
Sorry, happy to go first. I think when I look back to what the digital landscape was 2 years before, I would say a lot of churches were using their platforms. I'm not sure if they were necessarily using them intentionally or thinking, hey, this is completely at the forefront, depending on where you were in the country. Definitely had the channels, maybe not using them as well as they should have been using them.
Okay. Anyone else want to add to that or comment on that?
Yeah, I think for us, kind of relevant what we do at my church, and that we've been live streaming for a long time, probably one of the first churches in the UK to do so. So when we had different people come to our church, we always used to kind of show them around facilities, not to say here's our facilities, but hey, we really believe in digital. We really believe in live streaming. We said about I've always said about 80% of our newcomers have watched online before coming in person, which is a huge amount of people. And so we've shared shared these stats. But to be honest, there was a divided crowd. Some people were like, we get it, the whole live streaming, we're intrigued about it. Some people were like, no, it's all about the building, which is quite interesting because when the pandemic came, everyone, of course, switched to live streaming. So it's a fascinating journey, and I think I really hope right now that churches don't give up on live streaming. To be honest, I think there's been a really big realization about the potential with it, reaching new people, helping people, be that digital welcome mat for the whole church. And I hope people don't give up on it and say it's all about the the building experience, because the online experience is so important.
It's great to hear that, Jason, and to hear your own context. What about you, Sean?
I think the digital landscape seemed a lot simpler to people 2 years ago. There wasn't as much to get involved in. I think so many churches would have had their website, they would have had their Facebook page, maybe a group if they were really out there. And I think for many church leaders, everything else was a bit scary. Those kind of bigger things, actually, what Jason's just mentioned, it would have seemed so far off for so many people. So scary but simple.
I think also it's worth just naming, that this isn't a new thing for churches. Jason, you're just saying that you guys have been live streaming and doing the stuff present online for years. Churches have, I planted a church with a team 11 years ago, and the natural thing was to have a website presence, Instagram, Twitter. Kind of our default was to use them really as broadcast platforms, to tell people what we're doing, come along to the curry night on Friday night, the prayer meetings. So it was quite a two-dimensional way of communicating, but people were present. Then also thinking about the, just the number of things that were launched, over the last 10, 15 years, thinking about the Alpha Online series, just thinking about how, amazing to be able to offer that to many people. Then thinking about the virtual church space and people experimenting with that good 10 years or so ago, online courses, all that sort of stuff. So it's worth just naming that there has been a lot of growth and experimentation in this area. Would you agree with that? Would you say that that's been your experience or your observation?
I know for us, for Alpha Online was really interesting. Like as soon as the lockdown hit, we did Alpha Online, and we did Facebook ads, and the Facebook ads were, people had time on their hands, didn't they? People were at home, they were bored, but people were asking about the big questions of life. I don't know if anyone's had a look at the Google Trends of what people were looking for. Like it was really interesting. It's this kind of how do I do DIY actually about the meaning of life? Like, who is God? Who is Jesus? They were asking the big questions. And we found that. We really found that. We were when we did the first Alpha Online, we hosted it on Zoom. And it was a question like, are we going to be trolled? Are people going to come here just to take the mick of it all and come on and be horrible to us? But do you know what? We have had incredible testimonies from that very first Alpha Online, and we didn't stop there. I think over lockdown we did something like 8 or 9 Alpha Onlines, and we just did it one after the other, and it creates loads of questions because how Alpha, part of it is food. Well, how do you offer food online? So we had about how we're going to post parcels to people's home. So we put together these parcels with popcorn. We even wrote like a handwritten greetings card, like party poppers, all sorts of stuff, and we sent that to people's home. Of course, during lockdown, everyone's home. To have a parcel that someone took the care of them and say, "Hey, welcome to Alpha Online." In that first session, we open our parcels. We done these party poppers, but it was incredible. But as I say, I would say it's actually opened up so many more opportunities online. For example, Alpha. The thing about Alpha is like you can easily forget people's names. Unless you have like a name tag on. Well, on Zoom, you can't forget people's names because there's a name right by your name. It's just simple things like that. But also conversation starters. So here, if a dog suddenly walked behind me, well, you say, "Hey, what's your dog's name? Tell us about your dog." Well, immediately you get to know people's life very quickly. Well, on Alpha, that might take 2 or 3 sessions to know they've got a dog. But of course, you learn people. So actually, Alpha has provided a lot, from us, really exciting opportunities, and we'll never stop doing Alpha Online. And we've seen people become Christians. So many people. We had someone last week get baptized because they've put Alpha Online. It's been an incredible story for us.
So that's brilliant stuff, and that's we're going to drill down a bit more into our experience over the last couple of years and what you're thinking about in the future, but just a bit more on pre-pandemic. Let's just spend a little bit more time there before we move on. Just thinking about would you agree that it would be more the sort of pioneering types and maybe larger churches with this that were able to experiment a bit more in the digital landscape pre-pandemic?
I want to come at this and say, so I'm from a large church, and we weren't there. And in fact, the large church I was working at kind of 2 years ago, also wasn't quite there. So I think it very much depends on the vision and direction of the church, whether they have embraced digital and have been for years, if they've embraced the online landscape, then that's much easier. It's part of the kind of lifeblood of the church at that point. I think lots of large churches absolutely led the way, but I think the context of most large churches tends to be city centre, student heavy, so have a far younger and more vibrant congregation than, say, many rural churches would. So kind of trying to mimic and do what others do was quite a challenge because the expertise wasn't there, the resource wasn't there. And I think that was really lacking pre-pandemic compared to where we are now, with the amount of collaboration and online resourcing and churches helping others out. I think that's been a huge shift.
Yeah, it's very interesting. Lashoma, was that a similar observation for you? What would you say?
Yeah, I think I agree in the sense of larger churches, or like the church I was part of being quite large. We were mostly at the forefront of having live stream and stuff running because we'd been doing it before. And I think, like Sean said, of that vision had always been in place. And I think it was quite interesting then to see maybe smaller other churches in and around trying to do similar, but then not having the resources to do the same. Whereas now in present day, again, there's collaboration, there's more, I think there's less pressure as well for things to be perfect and like mega church style. It's more where you're at, people are happy to come alongside and really just push that forward. So it's been really cool to see.
So just thinking about then the last couple of years, I mean, as we started out this conversation, we named the fact that we've gone on a massive journey as the church across the UK, across the world, obviously, but we're focusing on the UK and just thinking, you know, how do you summarize that? You know, what are the key themes of how we've shifted over the last couple of years?
I'm happy to go first with that. I think I saw it in a few stages. I think there was first fear and panic, and it's like, oh my goodness, churches are closed. We need to be online. We need to be online. And then after a while, people are like, oh, actually, we've got this. Maybe we can think a bit more about what we're trying to do. Can we be a bit more intentional? And I think present day, it's more of a, okay, we can now lay the groundwork and really do this strongly and really focus on people, and less more of a, we need to be everywhere for the sake of being everywhere. So it was quite an interesting trend to watch over the last 2 years for sure.
Yeah, that's very interesting. Anyone else?
Well, I think, you know, one of the terms you've mentioned about this conference is kind of entrepreneurship. And I think that first week and 2 weeks was where entrepreneurs really shone through. Kind of those churches that didn't have anything in place were able to get things up and running so quickly. Even this, you know, the question of live streaming that had seemed so alien for years, suddenly it was happening within a week. And it for me, it kind of proved something that for many kind of churches kind of sat on their hands on these ideas for so long and didn't want to engage or couldn't engage for whatever reason. It suddenly became accessible. It suddenly became something to access out of necessity. So not necessarily the best reason, but it was embraced, and it was embraced so quickly. And I know for, you know, I'm not church leader myself, but being on kind of the youth team and helping drive things forward technologically and with comms, people really started to kind of take notice then of that area of things. And if it wasn't, again, for the collaboration of other people inputting things, the amount of Facebook groups I've been a part of that I've stolen so much from and learned so much from has been incredible. And we wouldn't have been able to do any of it without the expertise of all the people who'd gone before.
And Sean, we actually connected on the Facebook group Church Comms Collective, which I know a lot of people have found such great resource and help through. If you haven't come across that, anyone listening, do check out Church Comms Collective. I know those guys, they're absolutely fabulous, an amazing resource. So yeah, okay. Jason, how about you?
I think the innovation was really interesting. You know, for those churches who are doing live streaming a bit longer, we thought, okay, what can we do differently? There was one project which I thought was, you know, just an example really. We put together something called Southwest Praise. So what we wanted to do was to join together with church leaders across the southwest of England in a prayer meeting. So what we did is we had, I think it was 40 different church leaders, from bishops to church leaders to Anglican to Methodist to Elim to Independent to all AOG, all the different ministers. We connected with them all, and people broadcasted from home, and we had a prayer meeting. This prayer meeting lasted 2 hours long, and we had, I think it was 4,000 people tune in. Now, that would have never, can you imagine it, putting together a conference like that in the building? It would be a nightmare. Price and accommodation, organisation. But actually, those relationships have continued. Actually, people have said, this is really interesting. I would never have connected with you, but it's so easy online. So I think it's just thinking differently. Live streaming service is one creative idea that people have found out how we can use live streaming. But reality is, there's creative programming. There is, interviews. There is all sorts of different stuff. Actually, there is so many different ways. The message never changes, but the method of how we communicate that message does. It just is so exciting. The opportunities that we have in front of us.
Yeah, no, it's so good. And in your, I mean, you just mentioned there a particular project there and an event, but in your own churches, where would you say, how do you summarize the transition your own churches have been on over the last couple of years?
I would say no idea is crazy anymore. All the ideas, we've seen so much, outside services, people having services in car parks. Jason, mentioned carols and in random places, in supermarket car parks. It's just opened the door so much. And in our context, it just means that everyone is now pitching in with this kind of new ways, more fresh expressions on how we do church. For us, it was, that first summer after kind of rules were maybe relaxing a little bit. And we said, well, let's do a service outside. We realized we had a nice sloped grassy bank kind of at the back of our church. Let's do something outside. Let's stream it as well for those who have to stay at home. Something that would have been so unheard of for our church before, but people got behind it. We used our website for people to read the lyrics off of, and people really got stuck in. And yeah, I think the ideas train, the brainstorming between people within the church has really, for us, it's been amazing.
And you guys, Lashoma, how would you say for your own church?
I think it was just nice to see us thinking past the four walls, because for so long, church has always been about, we need to bring people in. But I think with pandemic that happened, instead, it was more of a, okay, how can we make church happen in other spaces? So for us, we were having church like in homes when allowed and whatnot. And aside of that, having prayer meetings online, and just finally seeing people embrace what we've been pushing for so long and emphasizing, especially if you're on any social media team, comms team, trying to explain to people, hey, this is really important. And then finally everyone being like, yeah, we get it. We see what you've been saying all this time. So that was, I think, my favorite part. Jason,
anything else to add?
I think it's great to see volunteers step forward into these roles to make digital happen. I'm sure lots of churches can relate. We don't have lots of camera team. We just don't have that. But we made it really easy. We said, hey, do you know, if you can use your phone and you can take pictures and do videos on your phone, well, you're a step there. To learn a camera, how all the intricacies of how it works, well, step there. And it's incredible. We have people who thought, I would never do cameras before. I would never try. It's a scary bit of kit. But now, people have got that skill, and, leaders and teams are upskilling. How can we do this better? So, overall, I mean, that's going to help the church communicate, isn't it? That's going to, help share what we do to a greater number of people. So it's a win-win.
One of the things that, just reflecting on that transition from pre-pandemic to during the pandemic, you would see digital engagement and ministries, sporadically used and engaged with, whether there was a particular vision and focus in a particular church or ministry. Also, if there was a particular priority, budget went towards that, and there was, that was enabled. But, the transition we've seen has been just a fresh appreciation, not 100%, but a fresh appreciation that digital now has a legitimate place at the table of mission and ministry. And I think that's something so exciting to see. but also just thinking in our own context, part of the Church of England, the fact that there's a digital team that was pulled together in 2016 who've been plugging away, resourcing the Church of England to grow in digital best practice. And so there was like signs of God at work preparing the way, not just for the last couple of years, but so obviously what is God doing? The fact that we've all had to up our game in tech and digital and online presence. What would you say? What would you say about that?
I think it's thinking outwardly. I just think I've seen quite a lot of churches. Well, that's quite a big statement. A number of churches now looking to employ digital pastors. Now, in the USA, perhaps live streaming was perhaps a bit more further down the line, but the idea of a digital pastor in the UK was, there was not a lot really. There was some roles and they were developing, but I'm seeing just churches who would never have thought about venturing into this space before are now, and so what I'm trying to say that is that people are taking it seriously. It's not just thinking the four walls, it's thinking outwardly. How can we reach people in different ways? How can we be creative? How can we, and that's, that there are massive knowledge gaps that actually we need to upskill in, like Facebook ads, for example. Have churches ever had to grapple with Facebook ads using that effectively? When we see other platforms that arise, Instagram, TikTok, and all these sort of things, it is now we need to take it seriously, and it's a resource pool because you're being pulled in all sorts of different ways, aren't you? But I think there is a hunger there. I think there is an intrigue there, which is great.
That's very perceptive there, Jason. Either of you guys?
No, I think I probably just echo what Jason said in the sense of churches really creating opportunities to have creatives come in, and in the sense of this would never have happened 5 years ago, especially in the UK, but now seeing that being, oh, actually this is a priority, and if we can invest in these people, they can help us then reach outward and really, I think, draw people in. I think the church in some respect has always lagged behind when it's come to things of digital, like with TikTok, for instance, like we'll probably only just be catching up once it's fully embraced. So it's really nice to be now kind of at the forefront and being like, hey, actually we can more or less contend with others on this platform and still do it really, really well. So yeah, it makes me really excited. I'm like, I see opportunity there for sure.
And I think
it's similar for you.
Sorry, yeah. Well, it's just, we mentioned mission, but I think there's social action that forms a part of this as well, and God's heart for those in need. I remember grinning to myself as people were setting up kind of Facebook groups online to help serve people, and it was great that as a church we were able to go, like, this is something actually we not that we're on top of this, but we're doing this already. We're doing this work, and now is a chance to kind of share our expertise with the community. It was for once the church that was ahead on looking after those in need, those who had, the single parents or the problem households. The church was already there in our community. Our church was able to then equip others who were wanting to help and assist. And, to see that and think about God's heart for the poor and those in need, that was wonderful.
Early on in the shift we had to make, everyone during at the beginning of lockdown, there's a lot of scrabbling around, wasn't there? There's a lot of reaction. I remember that early week of getting together with other pastors saying, how are we going to get through this next week? How are we going to do Sunday? And it was a lot of like collaboration and turning to each other, but also just as a team internally, just figuring out how do we contextualize this, and what does this look like in our context. But just wondered, just thinking about as you've grown together as a team, in a church, in your own context, where have you drawn inspiration, and where have you seen good examples that you've found really helpful for you to grow in your own digital offering? Jason, any reflections from you?
Well, I think Life Church in the US, they've been spearheading for a long, long time in this area. But to be honest, I actually look at other brands. I look at other churches, what they're doing. We don't necessarily need to reinvent the wheel with the little stuff. Really good example is like, earlier on today, I saw a church and they posted on social media just a really great way of expressing thankfulness to their volunteers. It was beautifully written, beautifully crafted post. And I was like, I'm going to nick that idea. And so tomorrow we're going to, take a real strong inspiration from that. So, so it's still for Jesus, if you want to call it that. But, constantly, how can we absorb from the culture around us? How can we absorb from other churches and learn that, like if you look at the big brands like Innocent Smoothies, for example, like, there's a great book that I read about them, how they develop their tone of voice, their culture, their character, all that sort of that stuff. Like we could learn a lot from that from churches. How can we, how can our words not just be words on a bit of paper, but mean something, they communicate something to us. So I think right now we can, it's not, we've gone from that survival mode to actually, how can we think structurally, but equally not in a structural way that it, we can just take risks and get things wrong and everything like that. But actually, we want to progress further and make a difference to that as well. So yeah, I think it's all about absorbing and taking ideas.
The show, was that something that you found, and what examples have you drawn from?
I think very similar to Jason. I found myself looking a lot at American churches because, again, when it comes to the way they do digital ministry, they are in some respect ahead of the curve. And I think a lot of what I was thinking of, especially with the platforms we're working with, instead of being a notice board, how can we be of service? So basically trying to meet a need and understanding what that need is and then communicating it really well. And again, other churches within the UK that were doing pretty much similar stuff. And yeah, we don't have to reinvent. We just need to make sure that what we're doing serves the people around us really well. And if you've got a solid understanding of who your audience is, then that's much easier to do too.
Now, Sean, you've got a particular focus in your own location on young people and youth, and you're the youth pastor at St. George's. And tell us, what's the journey been like for you and engaging with young people, and where have you sought to draw inspiration from?
Well, I tell you what, my inspirations mainly come from a WhatsApp group that I'm part of with national youth workers of similar sized churches with similar kind of makeup of youth groups. And that for us has been amazing because we've all been at the same point in time working on the same problems. Like how do we look after young people as they go back to school after lockdown 1? How do we cope now as lockdown 2, lockdown 3, etc. And just some key things about, we really quickly, someone was like, oh no, I don't know how to do Zoom safely. And someone's like, here, take this risk assessment. Here, take this user guide for parents. People who worked on things were just sharing it and giving it out with no worries about, even here it is in a Word document format, so you can stick your own logo on it, go wild. And we just work collaboratively on things, coming up with escape rooms to do on Zoom, working out how to use Discord to play Among Us. And it was just helping engage with kids exactly where they were at, and using people's current experiences on what was working. So exactly what the other two have said, not reinventing the wheel, not having to work so hard, because I think a lot of us were so exhausted as well. We're dealing with the stresses that come with our own lives or family lives while still trying to minister in church. And in a sense, the less thinking and work we had to do, the better. I think just learning from others and cracking through those issues together. And also for me, kind of regular conversations with people who are in that similar boat as well, just to chat through the stuff that was the great things and the things that were tough. I think that was a really good way that even when you're in the digital sphere, you need that space to kind of decompress and to work through your own well-being as we really work hard on this stuff.
Where would you say have been the big breakthroughs, Sean, just staying with you for a minute, with young people and youth ministry and youth work? Where would you say we've learned quite a lot as a church about youth ministry over the last couple of years?
Just how much discipleship you can do by playing with like games with young people. Loads of churches have discovered how just kind of hopping on Minecraft or Among Us, these kind of simple games that young people are playing, and you play and you're in a non-confrontational, non-threatening environment, doing random tasks that allow a space for young people to open up. I think lots of the other things weren't really breakthroughs. Kind of, we knew that young people were having mental health issues within their lives, so we could actually now really target it and work on that and give the church a reason of why we wanted to focus on that. But in terms of breakthrough, it's really hard to pinpoint specific breakthroughs with young people because the situation was so fluid.
There may be a sense that we're still just trying to figure it out. I mean, the dust maybe hasn't settled. We are still very much in the middle of it, aren't we?
Yeah, I think possibly the breakthrough has actually been breaking out of old habits and routines. So the old structures that always used to go, say a youth group used to always meet on a Sunday night, would always have a youth club. The pandemic gave us a chance to absolutely wipe that slate clean and go, well, what works now? And actually, let's just commit to this for the short term and be willing to tear it up and start again next term if something else works. And the breakthrough has been therefore the church and church leadership and youth workers having much more of that mentality of let's ride this wave, let's go where the young people are going. Not like Lashoma said, let's not wait till something's reached its peak until we get involved. I learned how to use TikTok as soon as I could. It was cringe, but I did. I don't know if I'd ever want to use it professionally and keep going with it, but I did, and I was there, so at least I could have conversations about it. I'm not the biggest content creator, but at least I knew it was there, if that makes sense.
It's really interesting. We had a chat with our staff team that because we found engaging young people on digital not always easy. But yet they are on TikTok, yet on YouTube they are watching generating millions of views on videos. And it's like, well, why? Like, why is not the church digital for young people working the same as gaming? Like, what is the thing? So I think there is a lot of questions right now. How can we, inspire our young people to create digital content, to tell their stories? I've got someone in our church who's a TikToker, and he just does these lives every day, and he invites questions. So he says, hey, ask me any questions, and as you can imagine, the whole range of questions is quite diverse, but he's developing this following, and I bet he is a pastor in the digital space. Like, we're helping him when we go. And do you know what? Will he get things wrong? Probably will. Will it be a bit rough and ready? Might be. But do you know what? That is an authenticity that the young people can relate to. So it's going to be interesting. It's going to be a little bit wild, a little bit interesting, but it's exciting.
Where would you say? I mean, we're verging to that sort of area now. I was thinking about where the growth areas are going forward. Where, in terms of digital ministry for churches, for youth ministry, where would you say in your own context, you're thinking, yeah, this is an area where we need to push a bit more. There's opportunity here from your own perspectives.
I think from observation so far, and when I think of platforms in particular, like TikTok and YouTube being the main ones, I think in the sense of they're platforms where you can reach many people and it's not so internal. And I think as a church, often we are thinking, oh, it means we've got less control over what we're making because so many people can be reached. But I think if anything, that's an opportunity. And like Jason said, it's that thing of we need to be okay with the rough and ready and the not so perfect, and maybe sometimes getting things a bit wrong. Like, that's perfectly fine. I think in this time period that we're finding ourselves, we need to be very adaptable and flexible with what we are putting out there as well.
You guys, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, well, I think that flexibility comes in actually, let's draw our focus away from our Sunday gatherings for a bit. So I think, live streaming has been the peak, but now what's next? How do we move out of that space and say, I mean, this particularly for smaller churches, they might be going, we need to put all our efforts into live streaming. And my gut is, well, maybe you don't. Kind of, how do you engage in the online space with the people in your local community on a regular basis? What I love is when you look at the most popular influencers and their videos aren't super polished. They're not super high editing quality. They're just a face shot. It's just content. It's just speech. And lots of church leaders, you have that. You can generate that easily on a regular basis. So use that. If you're a non-profit, get yourself a free Canva account and start generating some maybe higher quality content through there, better social media content. Engage locally would be kind of my plea.
I think it's a lot about holding the nerve, in the sense that when the lockdown kind of started to ease and you could meet in person, I don't know if anyone relate to this, but we wondered, where were people? Like, and we still have that now. We're like, where are people? Like, it's, our church, we had lots of new people, but equally, we've not seen people since the start of the pandemic yet. People say they're watching online. Now that might be the case, but and I see some churches to say, do you know what, we're going to stop our live stream. It's all about in the building experience. It's all about, stop the live stream, forget digital. And it is about holding that nerve to say, do you know what, like, actually, is the online experience a lesser experience? And I think there are two. I think there are. We all know meeting someone in person, like, there's body language like you don't get on Zoom. There's all sorts of different things that go on Zoom. But actually, is the online experience, and if someone stays online experience, is that a lesser version? Actually, if that's their choice, if that's their preference, well, are we to argue with that? Now, you could spend a whole day arguing that, that thing. And I think there is an element of, we've said to people, hey, online is great, but also we actually said we'd love to see you in person. Like, we want to hug, we want to, share coffee and all that sort of stuff. But, equally, Life Church in the USA they don't necessarily have, they say, if you want to stay online, stay online. Like, that's your comfortable space. And we won't transition you to an in-person, and I know all sorts of different terminology because online is in person as well. You're behind a computer. But there are lots of questions and where is everyone? Well, they are online and they are meaningful. They are our church community.
We're talking with Stephen Hance from Church of England the other day, and he was talking about the fringe, of the church, that he would suggest that the new fringe are actually found in the digital space. They're the digital fringe, and there's such opportunity. He was encouraging us to think about the opportunity that we have there. But it's also, we were speaking to Justin Briley yesterday about TikTok, and he is doing, he's obviously got podcasts and he's on Premiere, but also his own personal account with TikTok, and he's talking about apologetics and taking various topics, and he's one example of using that platform in a very interesting and engaging way, and it's clearly grabbing attention. He's got loads of views and different things, and it's which isn't surprising given that edutainment is a bit of a thing, isn't it? You see this in different sectors. There are doctors who are talking about what it means to be a doctor in different subjects, and they're getting loads and loads of followings and views, and having an apologist talk about faith and meaning of life. It's not in a way surprising that it's taking off. So it's fascinating just to see this short form content create such engagement, and as we're describing, as we're discussing with him, just thinking about at the same time this long form content podcasts that are exploding as well. There's been a proliferation of multiple podcasts over the last couple of years, and again, massive opportunity with short and long form content. And I guess part of the challenge is for us to, or the opportunity for churches, is to find, well, where's the space that God's calling us to occupy? Because we can't occupy each church individually, every space, but there will be spaces that we're called to occupy and to be present. Thinking forward then, say longer term, 5-10 years, as far as you can, there's a lot of chat in the last couple of months about the metaverse. Even in the last couple of days, metaverse has come up a couple of times, or a few times. And are you guys thinking about that already? Is that something that's going to be relevant for you? Should it be something that churches should be thinking about? What do you reckon?
I think with the metaverse, I think in this day and age, there will always be something that comes up. And I think if anything, it's more of a, should we be thinking about it, and more of a, are we just ready to step into these various platforms that come up, essentially? Because that's the thing, something new will always come up. And for me personally, with the metaverse, I'm still kind of on the fringes, but I will be learning a bit more to understand and see what that looks like going forward.
Brilliant stuff. You guys, Sean?
I think, as it has done during the pandemic, the church will continue to be that local touchstone for a community. And I think that's where it will really come into its own when VR and when the metaverse becomes a thing. What the church will have will be unique, is its ability to build community in person, on site, like in the physical space, and to serve the community physically. And it needs to use and embrace the future, whether it is VR, metaverse, whatever, but it will have that unique place in a community. That will hopefully be something that always stands. And whatever the church does, it needs to hold those two, not in tension, but together, and find a way to unify it.
I'm intrigued, what the future holds. It makes me think, I mean, theatres, up and down the country, are they just going to close and go to the metaverse? And I don't think it's going to happen, because when you're in a theatre, there are people around you. There is something in that atmosphere that it's a live performance. When there's that tenterhooks, that moment, and you're like, you could hear a pin drop in that room. Like, there's something about being in a room. So I don't think metaverse will, exclude the local church. I think, and we'll see churches shutting up down. I don't think that's the case, but I think we need to embrace it, because if we're not there, well, where is the church's voice? When there are people to be reached. So I think we need to explore it.
It's great insights and words of wisdom from you guys. Just last, as we're coming to land, just thinking about any top tips or practical learnings that you could suggest for churches that may be watching this now or in later on. What advice would you give for a church looking to engage missionally, but also to engage with their community through discipleship and things in terms of digital ministry? What would you say? Maybe a couple of top tips. Jason,
I would say data is really interesting. Like, long ago, it was all about the organic reach, and you used to trust organic. There were tips and hints and tactics to get that organic reach. Well, now I'm like, I have no idea how to get organic. It's all about getting good quality content. But even then, how do you know what good quality content is? I put up stuff sometimes on Facebook, and I'm like, no one would like this, and it does really well. So I would say, Life Church have a value, which is data has a seat at the table, and they look at data quite a lot and make decisions based on data. And I think it is important, but equally, don't let that be the only thing. I put up stuff and I'm like, no one's liked this, but then someone says, well, they have seen it in their timeline, and actually, don't just rely on that data. Keep on going, keep on pioneering, and have a look at data, but don't let that you stop. If you have a gut, if God calls you to doing something in the digital space, keep on going, keep on innovating, and something will happen.
Jason's fabulous. Lashomo?
I would say for churches at the moment, probably think a lot into curating digital experiences. So moving past your Sunday service, what you're doing can be shared in either short form or long form. I think if you're thinking that way, and also being very strategic now in like limiting your online and offline presence as well, what you're doing, because I think, like we'd mentioned before, earlier stages, we were all just like, we need to make it happen. But I think the more strategic we can get with what we're either live streaming, not live streaming, I think that will be really important and quite helpful in our mission, to get the word of God out there.
It's fabulous. And Sean?
I mean, those two are such brilliant ideas and ways to go. The only thing I would add is kind of engage in online communities nationally to kind of resource yourself and resource your own kind of church community, but then engage with the community locally as well. Find out, like Jason said, get that data, find out what people are interested in, what they want. Kind of don't just put things out for the sake of it. So listen, ask questions, have conversations, and learn.
It's been a fascinating conversation with you guys tonight. Thank you so much, Lashomo, Jason, Sean, for giving up your Friday evening to come and discuss the digital landscape of the church in 2022. I feel like we've traveled a long way thinking about this topic, and we've covered a lot of the bases. So if you want to find out more, please do connect with these guys. We've as far as we can, we've dropped in social links in the on the platform through the bios, but do connect with these guys. And guys, thank you so much. I hope you have a good rest of your Friday night, and we're looking forward to connecting with you again soon.